Yoast is my favorite SEO plugin for WordPress. I use it on all my business websites, and yes, I have 8, and I advise all my students to do the same. In my opinion, it's crucial for a great SEO strategy. So why Yoast, and what makes it great? Today, we're going to find out some secret Yoast tips that you can use to boost your SEO, because we are talking with the man himself. Joost from Yoast is here to answer questions and explain how to use Yoast to its full potential. Hello, my name is Kate Toon, and I'm the head chef here at the Recipe for SEO Success, an online teaching hub for all things related to search engine optimization. And I love SEO. And today I'm talking to Joost De Valk. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, you did.
I did, because I was reading a lovely blog from way back in 2008 when you were a mere snip of a boy, and it was telling me that the name came up from a conversation with Rand Fishkin. Can you just tell that little story? I know you've told this 100 times, but tell me.
Oh, it's a lovely story. The funny thing is Rand doesn't remember. So, SMX Stockholm, I think it was my second conference ever presenting as an SEO, and I was talking to Rand, and he goes, "Okay, so how do I pronounce your name? Joost?" And I'm like, "No, it's Yoast." And he's, "Oh, so it's toast with a Y?" And I'm like, "Yes." And I turned around and started buying the domain name.
There you go. It's one of those domain names. We've all bought silly domain names, but yours stuck.
Mine also turned out to be a 5letter.com, which is like, it's pronounceable. It brands fairly easily. Now, a decade later, I'm not always as happy with the fact that my company is named after me, because I hear my own bloody name the whole day.
Well, look, let's get stuck into the interview. I'm going to read out your bio first. So Joost is a 36-year-old web developer. I love the fact that you call yourself a web developer first. SEO and online marketeer. In the early days of his career, he worked in several companies ranging from enterprise hosting to online marketing agencies. This allowed him to work with several of the largest brands in the world. He founded CSS3.info, the biggest CSS3 resource on the web, in 2006, and sold it in 2009. In 2010, Joost created Yoast, which focuses on software, training, and services for website optimization. Team Yoast currently consists of more than 60 people around the world. Yoast SEO, Yoast's main software product, is currently active in over 8.5 million WordPress websites. That is an impressive stat. That must make you do a bit of back patting. That must make you feel good.
It's bloody scary.
Bloody scary, but bloody cool.
In a way, it's of course it's very cool, but it's scary because there's so many websites that rely on you, and if you make a mistake, it's annoying. And it's also scary because of the 8.5 million. I think about 3 million or so are stuck on old versions because they're not updating the website regularly. That's just scary. I mean, if I make a mistake in security somewhere, or someone in the team here makes that mistake and we don't catch it in our process, it suddenly becomes a very big, well, it's not like we're liable for it, but you feel
responsible.
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility. I think that's a line from Spider-Man. And also, there's only so much you can do. And most of those I'd say a big chunk of those 8.5 million people are ungratefully using the free version and still complaining about it.
We're not unhappy with that. I mean, if every one of them was paying for the premium version, I would be filthy rich. But that's never been the goal. We're not complaining about that. I think the free version works for a lot of people. Only when you're making money with your website do I at some point want to urge you to get to premium. But there's so many people that don't make any money with at all with their website.
The first question I wanted to ask you was, obviously, when you were a little boy playing in the fields of the Netherlands or whatever you do over there in that strange country, I'm sure you weren't dreaming about launching one of the world's most popular SEO plugins. What was your, why? Why did you end up doing this?
It's a long story, but anyway. No, so I basically rolled into tech. I studied theology for a bit, a tiny bit, and then quit my studies dropped out and started working in an IT company. And IT was hot. It was early 2000s. It was right before that first bubble burst. And I was making good money and was having fun. Was going from one company to the other. And at some point, my wife got pregnant with our first kid, and I decided to work some closer to home. And I looked for a new job and found one that taught me SEO, which looked appealing. But I'd never known about SEO. I was working in a hosting company, but in my spare time, I was doing a lot of CSS3 stuff and a lot of WebKit related, so WebKit, the core, Safari, and Chrome coding. Became a committer in the WebKit project. So I was very much into open source, built a website around that. And CSS3.info was on WordPress. I was learning SEO, so I started, maybe I'll build a small SEO plugin to fix some things that I know we should be doing. And I built another plugin and another plugin and another plugin, and mostly for hobby. Then I started releasing them, and people started using them. And in 2010, I started my own company, Yoast, which I called Yoast because I thought I would never hire any employees. And that was mostly for consulting. I was working with Facebook, eBay, and The Guardian at that time as a consultant. And I was perfectly happy doing just big brand consulting. And, well, that is a good moneymaker. I was not like in any way in trouble. And I had this SEO plugin. But the problem is this SEO plugin that I merged, WordPress SEO at that time, now Yoast SEO for WordPress, had 1 million users. Of course, there was me talking about it on conferences because I was talking at SEO conferences, and I mentioned that I had built that plugin, and it was my other SEO buddies all starting to promote my plugin, and suddenly that thing was installed on 1 million websites, and my email inbox was no longer liking me. So it basically just happened, as a lot of these things tend to do. I was at the right platform at the right time.
Yeah, it's organic, just like SEO.
Very organic. Yes.
And then when you have something that's doing so well, when you start selling something, and you're thinking, this is awesome, but then there's the customer support and the emails and and it changes into a completely different
bookkeeping.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like the reconciliation and it's a beast. It's a beast. Now, obviously, there are other SEO plugins, and we're allowed to mention them. Another popular one is All-in-One SEO, which I had before I moved over to Yoast. And people often say that they're both pretty good, but you do a better job of marketing. What would you say to that?
Well, to be honest, I think that the biggest difference is that most SEO plugins out there are built by purely web developers and not by SEO people. We've always been more closer to the latest changes in Google and the latest technologies because we're SEOs first in many ways. I call myself a web developer first and then an SEO second because, well, to be honest, because most web developers will never trust you if you say you're an SEO. But I'm sort of a weird hybrid of the two. And we're very deep into the SEO space. I've been speaking on the SEO speaking circuit for a decade. There's a lot of us that have a lot of SEO experience here, and we bring that to the plugin, which is quite the opposite of what a lot of other SEO plugins do. So I think that's where the success comes from.
Yeah, I would also say, though, that you come from a very user-friendly point of view in terms of the interface and how accessible it is for complete noobs. I think we're going to talk about some of that during the rest of the show, that, simple little elements within the UX of the plugin make it easy for people who don't understand SEO to do some basic SEO. And I think that's a big difference.
I'm happy to hear you say that because I think we still stink at that.
Well, look, hey, I'm not blowing your trumpet too much. We're going to talk about that in the episode, so you just wait. Okay, so obviously what I did when you were coming on the show, people were rather excited, and I got a lot of questions. And the biggest question, or the thing that drives people crazy about Yoast, is why is it being updated all the goddamn time? Every time I look into my WordPress site, it's like Yoast 17.3.2.4 is now released. So what is that about?
We bi-weekly release schedule, which means that every other week we do a release because we have about 30 people here developing, And if we make if we make our releases bigger, then we'd have more changes in one release, which you think you might like, but it would also be more bug prone. I'm honestly getting to the point where we think we can enable automatic updates. And this would be a user option. So of course you'd have to opt into that. We're very close to our testing process being so rigid and so reliable that I think we can do automatic updates and not kill anyone. And that is where we should be going. I honestly think that's where WordPress should be going as well. So WordPress shouldn't do 1 or 2 releases a year. We should do bi-weekly releases with small incremental fixes that just roll out automatically. Now, the problem is that we have a bi-weekly release schedule, but we do patch releases when we break something for more than a certain amount of people. And that amount of people is relatively low. So if I break something for 1,000 people, I'll do a patch release, even though we have 8.5 million users.
So I guess the thing that people worry about, though, is do they need to update it every single time, or can they wait for a bigger one?
You skip one, that's not a problem. I would urge you to update every other week or so, because I do think we improve the software all the time. But not every update might have that big of an impact on you.
Yeah, and of course, just a little bit of listener admin. Before you update any plugins, what must you always do? Always take a backup, just in case, so you can roll back. And Mike, I had a question for you around that. How closely do you work with the other big boys, like the WooCommerces of this world? You know, so if you make a big change and it's going to impact another major plugin, like, you know, Memberium or WooCommerce or Gravity Forms, do you guys like get together and have coffee and donuts, or how does that work?
We do that with automatic. Yoast is actually, I saw that I need to update my bio. Yoast is about 100 people right now. So we use Slack heavily, and we have a shared Slack channel with automatic. So we share a lot of conversations. We have an integrations channel on our Slack where we have external members from a lot of the bigger plugin teams. So we have guys from DV, Beaver Builder, that sort of. So we talk to them. Every time we do a release, we also have a release candidate for the next release, and we share it with them. But so we share them with them. We test with the major plugins ourselves. So WooCommerce, Jetpack, a couple of other ones. To be honest, that's probably never going to cover all of the plugins that are important to you, because what's important to you is different from all the. There's only so many major plugins, and we have become slightly arrogant enough to say that all the other plugins should test with us. And we will absolutely help everybody if they reach out. It's just that I can't keep up with 1,000 other plugins. So we test with, I think, 12 internally. That's 12 of the top most used plugins that we can see in our stats that are used a lot alongside Yoast SEO. And that's about where we end, but we try to not break any backwards compatibility, and we try to know who is using our integrations, etc. So, but it's that is a large part of why maintaining software like this becomes a hard job.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let's have a talk about the software itself and the interface and the usability. You said that you don't think it's great, but one of the things that people, you know, rave about and rant about is the traffic light system that you created, which obviously is a very easy get, but also I've seen people lose their mind over the fact that they can't get the green light. Are you still a fan of your traffic light system? Do you think it should have more colors in it?
Well, no. What we are working on is to make it slightly more like Google. So to make it, for the longest time, we've referred to one focus keyword, and we've been slightly too keyword based. The problem is that getting away from keyword based is very hard the way we run the analysis. So what you have to realize is that we run all that analysis in your browser. So that doesn't run anywhere else. That runs in JavaScript in your browser, doesn't go to our servers. So what we had to do was figure out how to become better at that while not blowing up your browser. So we're very close to a major release of Yoast SEO, in which we will move from keyword to key phrase, and in which we will move from single, like we'll only recognize it if it's in exactly that order, to recognizing it in more different shapes and forms, and automatically recognizing plurals, for instance, of singles and things like that. That has taken about a year's worth of development and 4 language scientists in our team to get well. And we've got it done for English now. And now it's up to us to then expand it to all the other languages.
Well, the thing is, I think what people like about Yoast is its simplicity, you know, the focus keyword. It still talks about keyword density, which always kind of makes me feel a bit itchy.
No, that's one of the things that goes away with that. It doesn't go away. It's just that we talk about it differently.
Yes.
Honestly, the funny thing is that in the SEO world, you've got 2 groups of people. You've got the people that don't want to talk about keyword density because it's stupid and we shouldn't talk about that. That's all the people doing SEO in English. Then if you're doing SEO in languages that Google is not as good at, then keyword density suddenly becomes very important. So this is a thing that there's really 3, 4, 5 different types of content SEO, depending on how proficient Google is at recognizing your language. The large majority of the documentation about SEO is in English and about English language SEO. But even for me, that's not my native language. And when I write in Dutch, Dutch is a very small language area. There's only about 25 million people in the world that speak Dutch. There's like 10 million websites in Dutch. So there's a lot of stuff to be ranked for in Dutch, where the ranking algorithm is actually different from the English one, and where keyword density, unfortunately, matters more than it does in English. So it's a hard story to tell, and it's especially as we are worldwide and we have users on every continent. It is like, what do you optimize for?
Yeah, I think another thing as well, you know, as my core is SEO copywriting in general. Obviously, English is one of the most sophisticated languages with one of the largest vocabularies compared to something like Thai, for example. And so there are so many more synonyms, so many different types of context, so many more homonyms and synonyms and metaphors that just don't work anywhere else, and idioms and all that kind of things. So it's so much more sophisticated. And I think the problem that people have, or the thing that annoys me about people when they're using Yoast or any tool, is that it is just a tool. It's going to show you some stuff, but it can't write your copy. It can't make you Shakespeare. Yeah. And people have very high expectations of it.
Not a turn it on and stop thinking type
Exactly.
And my wife has written an awesome post, The Temptation of the Green Bullet. I recommend everybody read that. Thinks about green bullets too much. If you're going to change your copy or the meaning of what you're saying because of our bullet system, then you're doing it wrong. At the same time, we try to get more sophisticated about how we give you feedback, whilst keeping it as easily accessible as that stupid traffic light system is. The funny thing about the traffic light system is that you figure out along the way that we are very used to the order in which our traffic light shows up. Turns out that this is not a universal thing. What? In some countries, it's the other way around.
No!
And there's so many things I've learned in the last few years about how all of that is just weird. Yeah. But the idea is something that I think most people grasp immediately, and we try to improve on that. So we're working on 9.0, which will be due, I think, halfway through October. We'll have in Yoast SEO Premium, because unfortunately we had to make that a premium feature because of how it works. And we'll have what we call morphology, and we'll probably come up with a better marketing term for that, but that's the linguistic term, which basically means it will recognize all the forms of a word. So if your keyword is learn SEO and you're writing learning SEO, then we'll recognize that is the same thing. Only in English so far.
Yeah.
You might have seen.
Pretty sexy, though.
It is very sexy. It uses dictionaries that unfortunately are not open source, which is why we had to do it in premium. So it becomes a bit of a SaaS out of our Yoast environment. We've added synonym support recently, which you might have seen, which also already makes that better. Then at the same time, our feedback becomes harder. So we're working on that. Like, okay, so if we tell you now that your keyword density is great, well, we're not actually measuring just your keyword density, we're measuring more, but how do we tell that to you? And so there's a lot of constant explaining of what you're doing to people, and at the same time trying to keep it as accessible as possible in the interface. It's a struggle, but I think we're getting better at it. And especially in our readability stuff, I think we're still improving in getting people to actually write more readable content.
So yeah, that was my next thing that I was going to mention. That the readability element, I think, is almost more important. You know, having that score, really understanding the readability age in Australia is around year 7, which is around 12. I mean, that's not true. That's not the literacy rate. But people read differently online. They don't read from top to bottom. They don't read everything. They kind of forage for content. I think that people underestimate that. You know, the long sentences and the excessive adverbs and all that kind of stuff. So I'm loving the readability stuff. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Yoast 8.0, which is kind of out to kind of work with Gutenberg. So tell us a little bit about that. What have you done to make Yoast Guttenberg friendly? I saw that you've implemented schema elements, and it's all pretty cool.
It is awesome. Well, there was a big step before that because our team has mostly built the APIs necessary for plugins to integrate into Gutenberg, because there was no APIs for plugins to integrate into Gutenberg. Right. So that took about a year. A full-time developer. So you can imagine that we're quite invested in Gutenberg. But in that release, we introduced some new schema blocks that basically allow you to structure content much more easily, because we suddenly could. We've been thinking about doing schema within the classic editor for quite a while, but we had never figured out a way to do a good interface for that, because it was so hard to do things like a how-to. How do you structure a how-to in such a way that we can actually demo that and that you then understand it, or that you just select a block, which is what you do in Gutenberg now. You select a how-to block, and it basically, we don't need an explainer. It just works, and you understand what you need to do. That's what the experience that we want for everything. And it's just very hard to get there. So Gutenberg opens up a new possibility for us to do that and to add much more schema blocks. One of the things I already saw happening is that people were creating blocks that they were making premium for a basic schema. And we were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So all our schema blocks are in Yoast SEO free. And I just don't want people competing on that sort of stuff. I think it makes the web better if everybody uses schema around their content in a good way. So we'll have a how-to block that's already in there. There is an FAQ page block already in there, but we've got a ton more planned. So things like jobs and recipes and other things that people use regularly that we think are a great addition to the web, to just be able to throw in a block like that, write your content as though you're normally writing content, as though it's very easy. I think it's very intuitive, and where it's not intuitive, we'll make it better. And then you'll suddenly end up with a how-to that's not just structured well, but that also has all the schema so the search engines understand it well.
Yeah, and we've done a few episodes on schema on the podcast, and it is still something that I think people find very overwhelming. So it's lovely when a plugin just comes with it, like WooCommerce. It's all just in there. You don't really need to do anything.
WooCommerce has done a very good job of that. Yeah. I think it's up to us to do a similar job for other types of content. Yeah. Schema is a lovely premise. It's just very hard for normal users to grasp, and I don't see why they should even grasp it.
Yeah, if it's baked into the plugin, then that just makes it so much easier. Yeah, fantastic.
That's what we're aiming for, to make it easily accessible, which is our mission is to get SEO easily accessible for everyone so that everyone can build a findable website. And that's what we want to do. And this is just another step in doing that and making it easy for people to build a website that's easy to find online.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier on that you kind of work with the plugins and some of the themes. You mentioned Divi. Now, a lot of people who do my courses are on Divi. I'm a big fan of Divi. But sometimes Yoast doesn't quite play well with Divi. It doesn't quite recognize. You have used the keyword, but it's like it's not there. And people are like, oh, my Yoast is broken. And it's like, look, if it's on the page, it's there. They're both only tools.
We're trying to make that better, though.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Gutenberg has brought us is a data API, and it looks like most of the theme builders and all these builder plugins will integrate with that. And that allows us to measure all the content that's on the page instead of just that one block. So it's a matter of us integrating better. We try hard, but it's hard to get all of that going with everyone doing separate development. I compare it a lot to developing for Android versus developing for iOS. There's like 100 versions of Android out there, and there's only a couple of versions of iOS. iOS is so much easier as a developer. In WordPress, it's even worse. We have 8.5 million installs and probably about 7.5 million different setups.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you're really not painting a good picture of being a plugin developer. I'm definitely crossing it off my wish list now of something I want to do. It sounds like a lot of work. So look, this wasn't in the question list, but I wanted to ask you this because I think it's an important thing for entrepreneurs and well-known business owners to talk about. And we've talked about Rand recently, and Rand's been very honest about the ups and downs of his career. You mentioned earlier that there's a big weight of responsibility when something goes wrong. Now, obviously, there was recently an incident where something did go a little bit wrong and all the media attachments got crawled. And I felt like you were like, gee, he was like, get the pitchfork, set fire. People went crazy. How did you deal with that personally? Did it just wash off you, or was it upsetting, or how do you deal with stuff like that?
That's upsetting. And especially as it usually becomes personal attacks. And people don't realize what they do with that. At the same time, there was a lot of misinformation. So the number of people that thought they were hit by that in comparison to the number of people who were actually hit by that was a very big difference. I can honestly say that I've looked at the numbers for so many websites, and I've only seen like 3 or 4 websites that were truly hit by that issue. At the same time, there were so many websites that had that problem, but it coincided with a Google update and a lot of other things. So what was really happening was very hard to tell. So it was a part of it sometimes, but not even half of it. It's painful when it happens. It's painful when people suddenly call you out and say that you're doing everything wrong and blah, blah, blah. And it's very easy to do that when you're the biggest in the industry. And we talked earlier before the show started about how peculiarly the SEO industry can be quite vicious. Like the people within it, there's lots of amazing people, but people can be quite argumentative. I've never seen anything quite like. It's not like that in the copywriting world. Copywriters are quite nice to each other. So they are. It's different. It's also why why you're hesitant to do some of that. I have to admit, I have a lot of great friends in the SEO community that also stood up for us at that point in time. It's just that people throw up in the SEO community. We throw up technical boundaries all the time. So we say that this is important, that is important. It's all these technical things that make us look important. Whereas to be fair, if you install WordPress, you don't even install Yoast SEO. If you write the most awesome content in the world, you will probably rank. Of course, we can help you do better. But WordPress by itself is already amazing, and Google is amazing at detecting a lot of that. What most people don't realize is that we talk to Google on an almost daily basis. So the attachment URL thing, we've been talking about that with them. We've been devising solutions. And to be honest, the funniest thing of all is people switching to other SEO plugins, because the whole attachment URL thing in the basics is the problem of your attachment URLs being in the index. we are the only SEO plugin that actually solves that problem in the first place.
Yeah.
So we unfixed our own fix, which some people got hit by because they had, because our plugin also causes a lot of crawling on URLs that you want indexed. And so our plugin worked too well for a while. But people don't realize, yeah, I switched to that because they don't have that problem. I'm like, well, check your site. All your attachment URLs are now indexed because your current SEO plugin cannot prevent that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, people are like being vicious, and sometimes they are frustrated, and then they, the things that people say on Twitter or on Facebook,
they would never say in real life. They would never. Twitter.
No, they would never say to your face. So sometimes you confront them and you go like, okay, let's have this call. And then they come in a call with you and they're suddenly like, and yeah, but it's hard. Yeah. And it is the moments in time that I personally hurt, because most of those attacks come at me. And that doesn't go away. I mean, I can honestly say that never becomes easy.
Yeah, and I think, anybody who's made a bit of a name for themselves in the SEO industry becomes a target for something.
I have it fairly easy.
Yeah,
I'm as white and male as possible.
You're super white and super male.
So I have a fairly easy position in that. If I look at friends in the industry that are not male to start with, people like Alida, if I look at the vitriol that sometimes get at them and the mansplaining, my God, it's like, and I'm probably well aware of that because I've got a very intelligent wife that usually is the one explaining to me how the world works. But it's just, yeah, it's vicious. It's funny, but it's not really harder on them than it is on me.
Yeah, I mean, as a woman in SEO, I've had many experiences of that. I think also because you go into forums and you are maybe one of 2 or 3 women in the forum, so you become a focus, both in a good way and a bad way. And people want to help, but then I don't know, it's weird. It's very weird. But let's talk about something a bit more positive. You said that you had, lots of good buddies in the SEO industry. And one of the places where you're going to get to hang out with all those good buddies is going to be YoastCon. So tell us a little bit about YoastCon and what you've got planned for that.
So YoastCon is our somewhat annual conference. I hope at some point we'll make it annual, but organizing a conference is a lot of work.
Tell me about it, dude.
But it's coming up in February 2019 in the Netherlands, in Nijmegen, which is actually very close to where we are with Yoast, and which is where I grew up and most of my colleagues live, etc. It'll be a 2-day SEO conference, and a very fun one. We've already announced some of the speakers. We've got Rand Fishkin, we've got Geraldine, who's probably even more awesome than Rand. Sorry, Rand. We've got our own John O'Ellison, me, we've got Perna, we've got Alida. So we've got a lot of fun people from the SEO industry, and we're trying to combine SEO with a bit of our own WordPress background and our open source background. So what is happening in the open source world, what's happening everywhere, and combining that with SEO knowledge and having a good time, having fun, learning a lot of good things. We've got Els Art speaking, who's from AG Consult, which is our own conversion rate optimization company as well. They do it for Yoast, but they do it for a lot of big brands. She's awesome. So it's a combination of a lot of copywriting content with a certain speaker we won't mention yet, and a lot of SEO on the slightly more technical side content, but also a lot of related stuff, because all of that ties together. I'm finding ourselves slowly moving away from just purely SEO to more global website optimization, because we've made the field too narrow.
Yeah, and moving into branding and authority building and trust and all that other sexy stuff.
Obviously, we are quite big on branding at Yoast. If you've ever seen our brand, you'll see that. I mean, we work on that a lot, and all these illustrations and everything is all like custom, and I've been working on that from the very beginning, and I have very very big opinions on how to do that. So we try to combine all of that into one story and, well, basically make you go away with a lot of to-dos like, oh shit, I now need to work on my website and make it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic. And I'll include a link to Yoast.con in the show notes so everyone can go buy a ticket. Now, I've got two final questions for you, which aren't really Yoast related. I guess, and this is a big question, but if you could kind of sum up what do you think is going to be the big thing in SEO in 2019? So, as people said, it's all going to be about schema, it's going to be about voice search, it's going to be about branded search. Not necessarily for Yoast particularly, but what do you think is going to be the thing that people need to focus on in 2019?
A couple of things. On the one hand, AMP and PWAs.
Google you have to explain those acronyms. Remember, we've got newbies.
AMP is Accelerated Mobile Pages, which is a project by Google on making the web faster in many ways. They're promoting that heavily. PWAs are progressive web applications, which basically turn your website into an application that you can install on your phone. Both have incredible opportunity, and there's a lot of work being done on both of them, which I like, and will probably have a huge impact, especially on the WordPress world, as you see Google doing specific AMP and PWA plugins for WordPress themselves. Instead of stimulating other people to do it, they're now building those plugins themselves, which is a huge step forward. So that is happening. I actually think that Gutenberg, which is not just coming to WordPress now, but also coming to Drupal, which is a huge step, I think. I hope some of the other open source CMSs will wake up and will implement the same interface as well, so we can converge towards a path where WordPress or Drupal or something else is the backend that you choose to your editor, and your editor is the same across everything, because that would make everything better. And Gutenberg, with its schema blocks, etc., allows for a much better web, because we suddenly can think about block-based content in a way that makes sense. We've been talking about blocks forever, but in the end, Google and a lot of other search engines still need that URL, because the URL is the thing that they tie everything to. And suddenly we can do that slightly better, and we can do schema better, and we can do all these things. I think schema is important, but I think schema is not accessible to normal people. And Gutenberg actually allows us to make that accessible. So I think we'll talk a lot about that. And we're not done talking about page speed in general yet. So I think that'll be a topic that's not going away for the next couple of years, which is very related to mobile. So there's a lot of things happening. I would say that probably PWA and AMP is what most people will be writing about.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks. And I think the Gutenberg thing is interesting too. I guess the thing I'd like to finish up on is I'd like to kind of take you back to when you were a lowly web developer working in SEO, and imagine that you've got someone in front of you who's just about to set off their own online business, build a website, and they don't really know anything about SEO. What would you say to them? It's a big question. I don't really know why I'm asking it, but what would you say to them is the number one thing they should focus on? I think you've touched on it a few times in terms of just writing great content.
I think most SEO projects fail at the very beginning because they fail to do proper keyword research. And that's probably the first thing you should focus on. Like, not what are you calling that product that you provide, but what are your customers calling that product? And then if you know that, if you have an understanding of how they perceive your product and how they think about it, it becomes a lot easier to write about it in their voice and in such a way that they will find you. And it is then writing good content. I mean, Yoast got big out of 3, 4, 5 good articles. Literally, the WordPress SEO article on Yoast.com still has like 40,000 links from different domains, because I wrote about how to do SEO for WordPress 10 years ago, and I kept updating it.
Understanding your audience, talking like your audience, and that feeds into conversational search and voice and everything. So
I think that there's one misconception in how most SEOs talk about voice search. I don't think it's necessarily voice search itself it changes so much. The thing that is that search engines are gearing up to do voice search more, so they're making changes to how they present web search results because of voice search, and that has changed our industry more than anything else. The featured answers and all these things are coming straight from them trying to prepare for that Google Home device and everything else.
Yeah.
It's not there yet.
It's exciting times, though. Like, I think, people keep on saying SEO is dead, but it just keeps evolving, and there's lots of exciting things coming up. I hope at some point we can say that it's dead, but I don't think that will ever be true. No, I don't think so. Well, look, Yoast, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to come on the show. It's been brilliant.
My pleasure.
I like the fact that you have a vaguely Cockney accent. I don't know why you do, but you sound like you come from East London. I think that's kind of cool.
I've spent a lot of time at The Guardian.
No, that's it. A lot of time at The Guardian. You see? Sounds like an English person. I like that. So thank you ever so much. If you want to learn more about Yoast, you can head to the blog post for this podcast, and you'll find links to all his bits and bobs and Yoast.con and everything else. Now, we obviously had lots more questions that we couldn't squeeze in for Yoast today, but maybe we'll get him back if he's willing. So thanks, Yoast. That's the end of this week's show. If you have any questions, then you can also head to the I Love SEO group on Facebook. And as you know, I like to end the show with a shout out to one of my lovely listeners. And this time it's from Jed Toe. And she says, it's great to listen to a podcast about something technical and not feel completely lost. Thanks, Kate. You make it so much simpler to understand SEO. Thank you very much. And thanks to you for listening. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listened. Your review will help others find the show and learn more about the lovely world of SEO. And don't forget to check out the show notes where you can learn more about Yoast and find useful links. And finally, don't forget to tune into my 2 other podcasts, the Hot Copy Podcast, a podcast for copywriters, and the Confessions of a Misfit Entrepreneur. Until next time, happy SEOing. You've got a Death Star, haven't you?
I'm not kidding. I've literally, for the last 5 years or so, I've bought every box over 500 pieces.
I'm a bit jealous of you. I've run out of space.
And if you're thinking that's a bloody fortune, yes, it is.
I know, literally. My son has so much Lego, like we could sell it and buy a second home. It's ridiculous.